What happens when a father's desire to provide for his family turns into a deadly deal with the occult? In a quiet corner of Indonesia, where the line between the living and the dead is as thin as a razor's edge, one family's prosperity came with a price tag written in blood. Imagine waking up to the sound of your own child screaming in agony, only to find an invisible force tightening its grip around their neck. Picture a mother, desperate and terrified, watching as her husband coughs up blood and live insects right at the breakfast table. This isn't just a ghost story. It is a descent into pure, unadulterated nightmare. A powerful, ancient evil was summoned from the depths of the ocean, a darkness so relentless that it threatens to drag every member of the Sujipto family into the abyss. It is a tale of jealousy, revenge, and the terrifying consequences of tampering with forces beyond human comprehension. Before we peel back the layers of this tragedy, be warned. What you are about to hear is not for the faint of heart. Our story begins in the bustling city of Semarang, Indonesia. This isn't your ordinary city. In the marketplaces here, the air is thick with the scent of spices, but beneath that aroma lies something far more pungent, the smell of black magic. In this strange village, doing business isn't just about supply and demand. It's about who has the most powerful spirits on their payroll. Shopkeepers here don't just pray for customers. They bargain with the devil for them. It is a place where envy manifests as curses and a successful competitor is often seen as a practitioner of the dark arts. In the heart of this chaotic market stood a grocery store owned by a man Sujipto. Sujipto was a hard-working man, a devoted father, and to the dismay of his rivals, wildly successful. While other shops struggled to get a handful of customers, Sujipto's store was packed. People from all over the neighborhood flocked to him. He was kind, his prices were fair, and his service was impeccable. But just across from him, in the shadow of Sujipto's success, sat the shop of a man named Vizik. It was a desolate place. Despite the heavy foot traffic in the market, no one ever entered Wizak's store. The shelves gathered dust, and the silence was deafening. Wizak's face was a mask of frustration and burning jealousy. Every day he watched Sujipto count his earnings while Vizak counted his losses. It was on one such evening, after a particularly profitable day, that Sujipto closed his shop. He clutched a thick envelope of cash, a smile on his face. This money wasn't for luxury. It was for hope. He drove straight to the hospital where his wife, Myrni, was waiting. Their eldest son, Ardi, needed an urgent eye operation. Sujipto had been working himself to the bone to gather the funds. When he handed the money to Myrni, the relief on her face was palpable. The surgery was scheduled immediately. The next day, when Ardi regained consciousness, the room was dimly lit. For a moment he thought he was alone, but then he saw him. Sitting in the corner of the hospital room was an old man. He was ancient, with skin like parchment and eyes that were entirely white, no pupils. No irises, just a milky, void-like stare. Ardi, a child, froze in terror. He opened his mouth to scream, but just then the doctor walked in. As the doctor entered the room, chatting cheerfully, the old man simply vanished into thin air. Ardi was shaken, but the doctors assured them he was just groggy from the anesthesia. A few days later, Ardi was back home. He was playing quietly in the living room while his mother, Myrni, got ready to take him for a checkup. Suddenly, the atmosphere in the room shifted. The air grew cold, and Ardi saw him again. The old man with the white eyes was back. But this time he wasn't sitting in the corner. He was standing right in front of Ardi, leaning in close, his face inches from the boy's. Ardi's blood turned to ice. He couldn't move. He couldn't breathe. Myrni walked into the room just then and found Ardi trembling, tears streaming down his face. He babbled about a shadow, about a man with white eyes. Myrni, worried, rushed him to the doctor. The doctor checked Ardi's physical eyes. They were perfect. The surgery had been a success, but Ardi's mind? The doctor suggested it might be psychological trauma or perhaps a lingering neurological issue, referring them to an eye specialist. That night, the terror shifted from the son to the father. Sujipto was closing up his shop in the market. The streets were empty, the silence heavy. He tried to pull the metal shutters down, but they wouldn't budge. It felt as though someone was holding them from the other side. After struggling, he noticed something tied to the handle of a small pouch, a putuli made of white cloth. His hands shaking, he untied it. Inside were strange, foul-smelling objects, bones, dried herbs, and tangled hair. It was a curse, a classic Indonesian telu. Sujipto's eyes shot up, looking straight at Wizak's shop across the way. He knew, without a second thought, he grabbed the cursed pouch and threw it into the nearest dumpster. He sprinted to his car, his heart pounding in his chest. As he sat in the driver's seat trying to calm down, a sudden, excruciating pain shot through his neck. It felt like a heavy weight was pressing down on his cervical vertebrae, crushing him. He groaned, rubbing his neck, but there was nothing there. He drove home, the pain intensifying with every mile. When he arrived home, he went straight to his son's room. Ardi was sleeping restlessly. Sujipto gently woke him up, wanting to see his son to reassure himself. But the moment Ardi saw his father, the boy let out a blood-curdling scream. He pushed Sujipto away, scrambling backward in terror, fleeing the room to find his mother. Sujipto stood there, stunned and hurt. Why was his son so afraid of him? Ardi ran to Murni, sobbing that a terrifying woman was sitting on his father's shoulders. Murni and Sujipto exchanged horrified glances. They couldn't see anything, but the pain in Sujipto's neck was real. It wasn't just a muscle spasm. It was a spiritual burden. Desperate, Sujipto called for Rustam, a local kabarai, a spiritual healer known for his knowledge of the unseen world. Rustam arrived, his eyes scanning the house with an intensity that made the air feel heavy. He looked at Ardi, then at Sujipto, and finally he spoke. The operation, Rustam said slowly. It didn't just fix his eyes, it opened them. The surgery activated Ardi's third eye. Rustam explained that Ardi now possessed the gift and the curse of seeing the jinns and spirits that walked among them, entities invisible to the naked eye. Rustam told them he couldn't close the eye completely, but he could reduce its range, ensuring Ardi would only see those spirits who intended to reveal themselves. Then Rustam turned to Sujipto. "And you," he said, pointing a calloused finger, "you have a passenger. A pachona, a female spirit, sits on your neck. She is the cause of your pain." Rustam placed a protective bracelet on Ardi's wrist and gave Sujipto and Murni stern warnings. "Keep Ardi away from the market," he commanded. "The marketplace is the largest den of Satan. The air is thick with the smoke of black magic rituals, with the envy of merchants. For a boy with a third eye, that place is a living hell." Sujipto was conflicted. His livelihood was in that market. But looking at his terrified son, he realized he had no choice. He agreed. 13 years passed. The scars of the past began to fade, though the fear lingered like a bruise that never quite healed. Ardi was now a young man. His sister Seifa had grown up beautiful and resilient, and a new member, a little brother named Orif, had joined the family, bringing a lightness back into the home. But Ardi's gift hadn't gone away. He had just learned to live with it. He avoided the market, keeping his head down, his eyes averted from the shadows that danced at the edge of his vision. One morning, the pressure of reality crashed back in. It was the deadline for Ardi's school fees. Murni handed him some money, but asked him to stop by his father's shop on the way to pick up the rest. Ardi's stomach dropped. Going to the market was his worst nightmare. Murni, knowing his fear, gave him a specific instruction. Walk straight. Do not look left or right. Do not look at the shops. Just go to your father and come back. Ardi took a deep breath and stepped into the chaotic street of the market. The noise was deafening, the smells overwhelming. He walked with the rigid posture of a soldier, eyes fixed on the ground. But the market had other plans. A crowd blocked his path, forcing him to stop. His gaze drifted. To his left he saw a man eating rice. But in Ardi's vision, a dark, shadowy figure stood over the man, dripping a black, sludge-like liquid into the food. Ardi shuddered and looked away. He pushed forward, only to be shoved aside by a fight breaking out between two vendors. He stumbled into a narrow alleyway, and there, leaning against the wall of a shop, was a beast. It was huge, dark, and malformed, its eyes glowing with malice. It looked right at Ardi and grinned. Panic seized him. Ardi broke into a run, dashing blindly toward his father's shop, desperate to escape the monsters. In his haste, he collided hard with a man. They both fell to the ground. It was Vizek. Ardi scrambled to apologize, helping the older man up. But Vizek didn't accept it. His face twisted in rage. He shoved Ardi away and stomped off, muttering curses. A nearby shopkeeper rushed to Ardi's side. "Don't mind him," the shopkeeper whispered. "Vizik lost his daughter 2 weeks ago." "He's not himself?" Ardi's blood ran cold. He looked up at the shop he had been shoved near. It was Wizak's shop. Through the curtain he could sense a cold, dark energy pulsating. He finally reached his father's shop, which was located on the upper floor. Climbing the stairs, he heard voices. His father, Sujipto, was arguing with his uncle, Sardi. Sujipto's voice was sharp, angry. "Stay away from my business, Sardi!" he shouted. "I don't want your help." Sardi stormed out, passing Ardi without a word, his face dark with resentment. Later, when Ardi spoke to his father, he learned the context of the anger. Sardi had lost his entire family, his wife and children, in a tragic accident years ago. Since then, his business had crumbled and he was left with nothing but bitterness. Sujipto believed Sardi was jealous, spying on his business, perhaps even cursing him. Sujipto, stubborn and proud, refused to entertain the idea that his brother-in-law wished him harm. He retreated into his office, a secret room at the back of the shop where the safe was kept. He retrieved the tuition money for Ardi, handing it over. Ardi wanted to leave immediately, but as he hurried out of the office, he dropped the envelope. The money spilled. He knelt to pick it up, and when he looked up, he froze. Surrounding him were dozens of them, jinns, silent, staring, shadowy figures standing inches from him. The air grew cold. Ardi scrambled to his feet, grabbed the money, and sprinted out of the market as if the hounds of hell were at his heels. That night, the atmosphere at home was tense. Ardi's younger brother Arif was fascinated by the supernatural. He sat with Ardi and Saifa, poring over a book a friend had lent him, a book about black magic. Ardi tried to warn him, but Arif laughed it off. "If you have the power, Ardi, then it's in our blood," Arif said. Looking at Saifa, maybe Saifa has it too. Saifa rolled her eyes, dismissing the superstition, but Ardi felt a chill. The power was a curse, not a gift? Meanwhile, Sujipto was closing his shop late at night. The market was a graveyard of shadows. Suddenly, he heard a crow cawing unnaturally loud. He looked down and saw it, another pouch, but this one was different. It was wrapped in black cloth and bound with red rope. A cold dread filled his stomach. He untied it. Inside was a small skull, human or monkey, surrounded by a mesh of black magic talismans. As he opened it, a horrific screeching sound erupted like a bird of prey tearing into flesh. It was the sound of the Santu Segoro Pitue. Terrified, Sujipto threw the pouch into his car and sped away, but the nightmare followed him. At home, he lay in bed, and the pain in his neck returned with a vengeance. In his sleep, he thrashed, caught in a vivid, terrifying dream. He saw himself floating in a dark, misty forest. Fires burned in the distance, and an old woman performed a ritual, chanting his name, calling upon a demon to destroy him and his family. She blew smoke into his face, and in the dream, his body contorted, bones snapping, pain exploding through every nerve. He woke up screaming, drenched in sweat. The next morning, Sujipto was weak, pale. He sat at the breakfast table, forcing himself to eat. Suddenly, he gagged. He couldn't stop. He vomited onto the table, but it wasn't food. It was blood, thick, dark blood, and mixed with the blood were maggots. Wriggling, disgusting maggots spilled from his mouth. The family screamed in horror. It was a physical manifestation of the curse rotting him from the inside. They rushed him to the hospital, but the doctors found nothing physically wrong. It was a spiritual ailment that modern medicine couldn't touch. Neighbors came to visit, offering condolences and a warning. "Sujipto," one elderly woman said, her voice low, "your shop is the best in the market. Someone is jealous. Someone has used black magic on you. You need a cabaret, not a doctor." Sujipto, always the skeptic, grew angry. "I don't believe in this nonsense," he shouted. "Leave my house." Murni, seeing his fury, gently escorted the neighbors out, but the seed of doubt was planted. Ardi, sitting with his siblings, looked at the book Arif had been reading. He read about the Santu Segoro Pitue, a ritual from the eastern seas that summoned a killer jinn. The realization hit him like a ton of bricks. This wasn't just random bad luck. This was a targeted attack. Later that day, Murni met Uncle Sardi. He offered her a herbal drink for Sujipto, his face full of concern. Murni accepted it gratefully, but when Ardi saw it, he felt a deep sense of foreboding. He didn't know why, but he threw the drink into the trash. He couldn't trust Ardi. Something was off. While the adults were distracted, Arif, the curious youngest brother, was at home alone. He heard a noise, a door creaking open. He ran to check. The front door was wide open. He stepped out to see a black pouch lying on the porch. It was the same one Sujipto had thrown away. Curiosity killed the cat, and it almost claimed Arif. Untied the black cloth. He saw the skull. And then the screeching began. The wind howled. Shadows coalesced. Arif, terrified, ran back inside and slammed the door shut. That night, Arif fell violently ill. His fever was sky-high, his body burned. Murni wanted to take him to the hospital, but it was late, and Sujipto was still recovering. "We'll go in the morning," Murni said, kissing Arif's sweating forehead. But Arif knew. He looked at Ardi and Saifa with eyes that were already starting to glaze over. "I love you guys," he whispered. "Be brave. Be strong." It sounded like a goodbye. Ardi and Saifa exchanged worried glances. The atmosphere in the house was heavy, suffocating. Sujipto in his room tossed and turned, unable to help his son. In the middle of the night, Ardi woke up to the sound of screaming. He rushed to his father's room. Sujipto was convulsing on the bed. The shadow of a massive beast was projected on the wall, towering over him. Ardi froze. Then a light in the hallway flickered and died. The front door creaked open by itself. Ardi ran to check, but no one was there. When he returned, he found Ardi and Saifa hovering over Arif. Arif was convulsing too. They opened his shirt and gasped. Under his skin, something was moving, bugs, hundreds of them, burrowing, tunneling. They erupted from his nose. Saifa tried to squash them, but it was futile. Sujipto in the other room let out a death rattle, a choking sound. And then the true horror began. Arif screamed. A thread, thick and wet, was pulled out of his ear. Ardi grabbed it and yanked. It came out, followed by a gush of blood from Arif's eyes and ears. And then, with a wet, tearing sound, a knife emerged from Arif's chest. It wasn't a knife he had swallowed. It was being pushed out from the inside. It sliced through his skin, cutting him from chest to stomach in a gruesome display of supernatural violence. Arif collapsed, his small body broken. The youngest member of the family was gone. The funeral was a blur of grief and rage. Ardi stood by the grave, his knuckles white. When he saw Uncle Sardi approaching, offering condolences, something snapped. Ardi lunged at him. "Get out!" He screamed, his voice raw with hatred. "Get out of here! You did this!" Sardi was shocked, stumbling back as Ardi attacked him physically, driving him away from the grave. Ardi knew. He didn't know how, but he knew Sardi was involved in this darkness. Sujipto was in the hospital now, in a coma. The doctors had given up hope. The family brought him home to die. The house felt like a tomb. Murni was catatonic with grief, unable to eat, unable to speak. Saifa tried to hold them together, but she was breaking inside. Ardi, however, found a new resolve. He called Rustam, the old healer. Rustam arrived, his face grave. He walked through the house, sensing the residual energy. He picked up the cursed pouch Arif had opened. "This is from the eastern seas," Rustam said, his voice trembling slightly. "This is the Santu Segoro Pitue. It is an ancient, powerful magic. A dark pact made with the ocean spirits." He looked at Ardi and Saifa. "This curse seeks to consume the bloodline. It wants everyone." He gave them protective bracelets and gave them a dire warning. "Whoever did this is dangerous. Do not confront them directly. They will kill you without hesitation." Ardi's mind raced. He knew Sardi was involved. He went to the market to find him. He found Sardi closing his shop. Ardi didn't hold back. He accused him of everything, of the black magic, of killing Arif, of destroying the family. "Did killing my brother and my son satisfy you?" Ardi roared. "Or are you coming for my sister too?" Sardi's face crumbled. For the first time, the bitterness washed away, replaced by a look of profound sadness and fear. "No, Ardi," Sardi said, his voice cracking. "I didn't do this. I want to save them." He grabbed Ardi's shoulders. "Your father, Sujipto. He is the one who used black magic. He is the one who started this." Ardi froze. "My father?" He doesn't believe in magic. He didn't, Sardi said, tears welling in his eyes. 13 years ago, when his shop was failing, when you needed that eye surgery, he was desperate. He had no money. So he went to a shaman named Debir. Debir was the most powerful in the region. He made your father the most successful businessman in the market. Sardi explained that Sujipto had changed. He had become greedy, vengeful. If a competitor cursed at him, Sujipto didn't just defend himself. He asked Debir to return the curse tenfold. I tried to stop him, Sardi wept. I told him this path would destroy him, but he wouldn't listen, and then Debir's magic took a toll. Vizik, the man across the street, he hired a shaman to attack Sujipto. Debir protected Sujipto, but the protection required a sacrifice. He revealed the terrible truth about Vizek's daughter. Sujipto had asked for a curse to hurt Vizek, but Debir's spell was too strong, and it missed Vizek, striking his innocent daughter instead, killing her gruesomely. That was why Vizek was so broken. And now, Vizek had hired the ultimate revenge shaman who practiced the forbidden Santu Segoro Pitue. He has a guardian jinn, Ardi, Sardi said. That's why Rustam couldn't see the source before, the guardian hid it. But I also have the sight. I saw what Sujipto did. I saw the room. Sardi told Ardi about the secret room in Sujipto's shop, the place where he hid his grimoires and cursed objects. Ardi rushed there. He broke the lock. Inside he found the chest. It was filled with the tools of black magic curses, dolls, powders, and a book. At the back of the book was a phone number. Ardi dialed the number. It was Debir. Arrangements were made. Ardi traveled to Debir's village to find a cure. But Debir's daughter, Ratna, refused to help. She was frail, bedridden, destroyed by the very magic her father practiced. My father is gone, she whispered. He paid the price. There's no help here, but she gave him the final piece of the puzzle. To break the Santu Segoro Pitue, one must perform the Ruqyah, a ritual requiring water from 7 different seas collected at specific temples along the coast. Ardi returned home with the heavy burden of knowledge. He went to Sardi. They had to act fast. Sujipto's time was running out. Rustam joined them. They performed a ritual to open Saifa's third eye as well, realizing they needed all the help they could get. The race against time began. Ardi and Saifa, accompanied by Rustam and Sardi, traveled to the 7 coasts. It was a journey into the heart of darkness. At each beach, they had to enter a sacred temple, extinguish a ritual lamp, and collect water. But they weren't alone. The water was guarded. At the first temple, high on a cliff, they saw a man. It was a jinn in human form. Fear not, Rustam had warned, and they cannot touch you. Ardi stood his ground. He stared into the jinn's eyes and said, I am not afraid. The jinn bowed and vanished. At the next beach, a tall, pale figure in white floated above the water. In the jungle, a grotesque, goblin-like creature snarled at them. Ardi and Saifa, their third eyes wide open, saw them all. They fought exhaustion and terror, traveling day and night. They had 5 days. On the 6th day, at the 7th sea, the final guardian was the most cunning. It was invisible. It stalked them, tripping them, whispering threats. It smashed their water pot, shattering their progress. Ardi fell to his knees, despair washing over him. They had failed. They were 1 bottle short. Suddenly, a carriage appeared. A beautiful woman stepped out, surrounded by an ethereal glow. It was the princess of the sea, a jinn of high rank. She saw their plight. Take this, she said, handing Ardi a vial of crystal-clear water. The ocean knows the innocent from the wicked. Ardi and Saifa raced back. It was the final day. They had until 8 p.m. Back at the house, Rustam and Sardi were preparing the main ritual. The sky turned black. The wind howled like a banshee. The lights in the house flickered and died. The Santu Segoro Pitue had arrived. Outside, Rustam began the chant. But the entity was too strong. It descended from the sky, a towering shadow of death. It didn't care about the chants. It grabbed Rustam. Bones snapped. Rustam screamed once and then silence. The demon crushed his head effortlessly. Sardi rushed out, horror on his face. He tried to run, but the demon was too fast. It lifted Sardi into the air with one hand, and with the other it reached into his chest and tore out his heart. It ate the heart in one gulp. Saji and Rustam were gone. Inside the house, Ardi and Saifa were trying to save their father. The temperature plummeted. Ardi took the holy water and began to pour it over Sujipto's comatose body. "Father, wake up!" he cried. Saifa grabbed another bottle, splashing the water over him. Suddenly, the front door blasted open. The demon filled the hallway. Ardi grabbed a flashlight to see, but a massive, clawed foot stepped on his hand, crushing the bones. Ardi screamed. The demon kicked him across the room like a ragdoll. Saifa ran to him. "Go finish the ritual," Ardi shouted, pulling himself up, blood soaking his sleeve. "I'll distract it." Ardi stood up, facing the monster. "Hey!" he screamed. "Look at me!" The demon turned. It roared, charging him. Ardi dodged, diving behind furniture, drawing its attention away from Saifa. Saifa seized the moment. She grabbed the last bottle of water. She ran to her father. "I'm sorry, Baba," she whispered, and poured the water over his chest. Steam hissed. The water burned the spiritual tether connecting the demon to this world. The demon shrieked in agony. It spun around, grabbing Saifa and throwing her against the wall. "Finish it!" Ardi yelled. Saifa scrambled up. There was one bottle left. Ardi saw it. He made a desperate dive for it, but the demon intercepted. It grabbed Ardi by the throat, lifting him high. It reached for Sujipto as well, intending to kill the source of the pact. Ardi dangled in the air, choking. He saw Sujipto's face, pale and still. With the last of his strength, Ardi threw the empty bottle he was holding, aiming not for the demon, but for a large clay jar of holy water sitting on the shelf. It shattered. A wave of water splashed across Sujipto and the demon. The effect was instantaneous. The demon screamed, a sound that shattered glass. It caught fire. Blue flames erupted from its skin, burning with an unnatural heat. It thrashed, the smoke pouring from its eyes, and then it dissolved into ash. Silence fell over the house. Ardi fell to the floor, gasping for air. Saifa crawled over. They watched their father. Slowly, the color returned to Sujipto's cheeks. His chest rose and fell. His eyes fluttered open. "Baba," Saifa whispered. Sujipto looked at his children, then at the ashes of the demon, and finally at the bodies of Rustam and Sardi outside. He knew the price they had paid. Days later, Sujipto was strong enough to visit his shop. He walked to the secret room. He took every book, every cursed object, and every talisman. He called Dabir one last time. Together, they released the guardian Jinn that had been bound to the shop for years, sending it back to where it belonged. Sujipto vowed never to touch the dark arts again. He would live simply, honestly, even if it meant being poor. And what of Vizek, the man who had started it all? He was found in his ritual room, his body torn in half, the altar destroyed. The deal he had made with the Santu Segoro Pitue had been nullified when the demon was killed, and the demon had collected its due payment with Zak's soul before leaving this world. The story of the Sujipto family is a terrifying reminder that when you invite the supernatural into your life to gain the upper hand, you aren't making a deal. You're making a meal. The hunger of the dark is never satisfied, and the price of success can be the lives of those you love most. The market in Semarang still buzzes with activity, but now, when the sun goes down, the silence isn't just peaceful. It's watchful, because you never know who or what is watching from the shadows.